Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Letting Go of Her podcast. Um, okay, so I'm recording this episode because I just have to share. I just have to share the goodness of God. Isn't this pretty much the whole point of this entire podcast? But no, specifically, I want to talk about this week because it just like hit me. Like it just hit me maybe sometime last week or so. Just like I'm just amazed at like how God just uses everything for his good, like for the good. Like it's just yeah, okay. Anyways, let's get to the story. So I don't know if I like specifically mentioned it in a previous episode or not. Like I had talked about how potentially um I would be like sharing my testimony at church at one point. Um and how I was like kind of working on like getting the details or if it was going to happen or not because I feel that like pretty much all summer long and maybe even longer than that I've just been having it in my heart, like the Lord has been putting it in my heart that like I need to share this, I need to share this. But obviously dealing with social anxiety, you're like, no God, I'm not going to share this, like I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out up on the pulpit. Like there's absolutely no way that I'd ever be able to stand up in front of people and speak like and talk about this, right? But like just as of lately, it's just like the Lord is he wakes me up in the middle of the night and is like the only thing I can think about is about me being up there and like speaking. And for a while it was kind of like, okay, well, is this something that like I want? Like is it something that I personally want to share to feel some sort of, I don't know, glory for myself, like some sort of pride? Like, is that what I want? Or is this what the Lord like really, really wants for me to do? Um, and I prayed about it because I'm like, I don't know. You know how like sometimes I don't know about you guys, but for me, like sometimes I don't know if something I'm thinking is like my own thoughts or if it's God talking to me, right? And it takes a lot of concentration, but it also takes a lot of prayer, and a lot of just like meditating on what it is that I am thinking, and that I'm able to kind of like distinguish like, okay, no, this is my own selfish wants or this is what God wants me to do. So I had really been battling with this, right? Because I'm like, no, do I want some sort of like quote unquote fame in the church? And that's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Like do I want to make myself known in the church? Like it am I trying to speak um I don't know, to get pity, to get sympathy? Like these were all the thoughts that were running through my head, and I'm like, like God, like please let me know if this is really something that you want me to do. So you know, I've been praying and praying and praying, and the opportunity came up for me to officially share my testimony. um I personally wanted to share it to, so we have like a moms group, right? And I personally wanted to share it to the moms group because I feel that like that's a smaller, more intimate kind of setting. There's still a lot of moms. um but like the room is smaller and I feel that like I know a bigger percentage of the women in there, right? So it was sort of like a more comfortable setting. But God doesn't want us to do things when we're comfortable, right? Like He wants us to be uncomfortable because being uncomfortable helps us grow. So I had asked someone, like, hey, how can I get up, you know, and speak at this mom's group or whatever? And you know, this person, she told me what to do. And then when she told me what to do, I was like, you know what? Nah, like nah, it's cool. Like maybe next year, like maybe you know, and it wasn't like it was a huge list of things that I had to do or whatever. It was just literally like just reach out and see what they say, right? Yeah, I had asked a friend, like, how do I like I just keep having this mom's group in my heart. Like, what can I do about it? And all she told me was like, reach out. And I'm like, yeah, no, no, not gonna happen. um, and so but she had already known for like my friend had already known for like the past, like I want to say a couple of months, that I had been thinking about sharing my testimony, because she even mentioned like, why don't you share your testimony at small group, right? And you would think that I would feel more comfortable sharing my testimony in my own small group because I've been in it for what, almost 2 years, like a year and a half. And these are people that like I feel that I interact with more on like a day-to-day basis. But for some reason, me speaking in like smaller, more intimate, where people actually know me settings gives me more anxiety than me speaking up in like public towards people that I don't truly know. If that makes any sense at all. I feel like the people that know me are going to judge me more than people that don't know me. That is what my anxious brain is telling me. So it's truly been in my heart for like a really long time to share my testimony, right? And so when she had mentioned like, "Oh, share it for a small group," I was like, "Yeah, no, not gonna happen." And she was like, "Okay, well, maybe one day, right?" So this was the person that I asked about the moms group, right? And all she said was reach out, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not gonna happen." um, but then come to find out that she actually mentioned me for the women's group that we have in our church. And this is like a women's group um, that is uh, full of like hundreds of women. They meet twice in one day, just depending on, schedule wise, which one you want to go to. And it's a way more intimidating setting for me, because one, you're like up like it, you're up in the actual like pulpit, right, where like people preach from, and that is scary all on its own. I'm not preaching, but like that just, I feel that I am not worthy enough to be up there um to speak. And I just feel that like I'm not like Christian enough. Like I'm not godly enough. I'm not like a God-fearing woman enough to be able to be up there and to be able to share any part of my story, right? And this is kind of where I've been lately. And I know that it's the enemy right now that is trying to bring me down. Because something that I struggle with a lot is just feeling worthless, feeling not good enough, kind of just retracting into my own little bubble and not really wanting to step out of my comfort zone, right? And like me sharing my testimony to this women's group is completely out of my comfort zone. So I feel that the enemy right now is trying to kind of um bring me down even more, right? Like I'm speaking about specifically what has happened to me in the last year, right? Like I can share so many stories of my testimony because I have gone through so much and God has shown up through so much in my life. But they only give me 5 minutes, so I can't share my whole life story. um, but I'm going to be sharing just kind of what's been happening in my life most recently. And it's something that I've been praying about, and something that like each week that I go to this women's group, I just keep getting confirmation over like, yes, this is exactly what I need to talk about. But the enemy, it is like ugh, he's sneaky. My daughter calls the devil was the sneaky snake, right? I remember when she first learned about it, like in preschool. She'd be like, "Mom, that the sneaky snake is telling me that I need to lie right now." Like the sneaky snake is telling me to do something bad, right? She's a little bigger, and she doesn't necessarily notice when she's doing something wrong yet, right? And it's funny that she did notice it like before when she was younger. Um, but like it's just funny. Like yeah. Anyways, but the sneaky snake right now is like using what I'm going to be talking about like against me. Um, and it's just crazy, right? Because right now, what I'm going to be talking about is basically how God helped me not feel so lonely. And right now, the sneaky snake is telling me that I am alone and that no one is here for me, and that everything that I've believed in the last like year is a lie. um, oh, damn, darn. That sneaky snake, right? But anyways, I have been just like praying for confirmation, just like, God, like, is this really what you want me to do? And obviously he's like, yeah. But I keep asking anyways because I'm like, no, are you sure? Like, are you sure? And because part of me, like, I'm so scared. Like, part of me is still like, I don't want to do it, right? Um, but I also keep praying over confirmation on, like, am I speaking what I should be talking about, right? Because like I said, I've lived a life, and I there's so many things that I can talk about. But each week after leaving this women's group, I just get more and more confirmation over, like, no, like, you're headed in the right direction. Like, you're gonna talk about the right things. Um, so a part of me is like super excited about that. But um, what I kind of wanted to get to in this whole episode, I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but like, just how amazing God is. And also, this is like literally the only confirmation that I need that I am doing the right thing, not even the right thing, but I'm doing what God wants me to do. So last year in July was when I started having my panic attacks. I've pretty much dealt with anxiety all of my life, but I've never dealt with anxiety this bad, like this intense. I've never had a panic attack. I've had, like, I don't even want to say that I've had an anxiety attack. I've had anxiety, but not an anxiety attack. But this turned into a full blown just panic disorder, which has turned into an OCD disorder. And OCD isn't necessarily always like, oh, I need to, tap the table 5 times before I move over, or like I need to wash my hand 10 times before that. Um, OCD can also just be an obsessive, like, ruminating thoughts. Um, so yeah, I'll have to make a whole episode about this whole OCD thing, but it's basically just it's just obsessing over like one little thing. And for me, it was obsessing over any, like, body noise that I would feel, because the panic attacks were so intense and it just felt like so out of control of my own body, um, that, like, any body noise, any new pain would send me into panic because I thought, like, oh nope, this is it, like, this is where I die. This was literally the thoughts that were running through my head, right? And I just felt awful. Like, the physical symptoms that I felt were so intense, they were so strong that I thought that I was dying about, 90% of the time. And my husband was the one who suggested, like, go to the doctor, go get a physical so that they can tell you that you're crazy. And he means that in the most loving and endearing way. But he's like, go to the doctor so they can tell you that you're crazy and you can get over it. And I was like, no, but I'm gonna go and they are gonna tell me something's wrong. Like that was the thoughts that were running through my head. Um, but I finally made the appointment, and it wasn't till like months out because obviously, you can never get a doctor's appointment. And it wasn't necessarily something that I needed to go to urgent care for, right? Um, so I made the appointment and I went to the doctor to get a physical done. And so a doctor walks in and she's like, "Okay, like, you came here for a physical, like, what's going on, right? Like, is something wrong, something hurting you, something bad or whatever?" And I just remember, like, I just started crying and she just kind of looked at me and I was like, "I've just been having really, 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 really bad anxiety." And she's like, "Okay." And she's like, "Well, does like, of what?" And I was like, I feel like I'm dying. Like, I feel that, like I don't feel like myself like I did. My body is just like working against me right now." And she was like, "Well, like, does anything hurt? Like what's bothering you?" And I'm like, "Everything." Like, everything hurts. Everything's bothering me, right? And so, she did like a little, like, checkup and whatnot. And she said, like, "Okay, well, we'll run some blood tests." She's like, "I'll check your iron levels and your thyroid levels because sometimes that causes like anxiety or whatever." And at this time, like, I had my son with me, right? Because husband works. I got to take the babies with me to the doctor's appointments. And I had my son with me, and he was like tugging on my shirt, right? And I was like, telling him, like, no, like, you can't nurse right now. And so she was like, "Oh, are you still nursing?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Oh, wow." She's like, "Good for you." And I was like, "Thanks." I'm like, "It's not really by choice, but I haven't really been able to wean him." And then she was like, yeah, she was like, well, she's like, maybe that's also why you feel so awful. She's like, maybe just try weaning him and get some sleep. And I'm like, yeah. I was kind of like, well, easier said than done, right? Um, but then, she was like, okay, well, she was like, just go and get your blood work done and good luck, and just like walked out of the room. And I definitely didn't feel any better. But I mean, I guess I also didn't really feel any worse. But before that, I forgot the main point of of her walking into the room. Before she walked out and said good luck, she did ask me like when did I start feeling the panic, and I said, well, it started like back in July. And then she asked me, when does your son turn 1? And I was like, well, he turned 1 in August. And so she was like, oh, well, it sounds like it could be just postpartum anxiety. And I was like, okay. And she was like, maybe I can refer you to like a social worker so you can get therapy. And I was like, well, I was already in therapy, and I was discharged in June. And she was like, well, since therapy didn't work, then I'll just refer you to a psych so that they can put you on anti-anxiety meds. And then that's when she said, good luck, and walked out of the room. I think that like at one point, I just kind of accepted that like I would need to be put on meds. And this isn't against anyone who takes meds for any mental health issues. Um, I know that they can be, lifesavers for some people. But for me, I just felt that that wasn't the route that I wanted to go on until I was absolutely sure that there was absolutely no way that I could kind of handle this without the meds. And I think like kind of at that point, I was just like learning to accept like, okay, I might just need to be put on meds. And I talked to a few, people, and they were like, you know what, like if you need to be put on meds, like that's okay. Like it's not a forever thing, right? Um, but then I talked to someone else who is on meds, and they were like, if you don't have to do it, don't take it. Like, I'm telling you right now, it doesn't help or it doesn't work. It just makes everything worse. So I was just kind of like battling between like, do I want to be put on meds or do I not want to be put on meds? And that was when my husband suggested, like, maybe you should just go back to therapy, right? And I was like, no, but if I go back to therapy, that means I failed, right? Like these were all the thoughts that were running through my head. And my husband was like, no, like maybe you just need someone to talk to, right? And like someone who's gonna understand you, and someone who's not gonna like it's gonna give you like an unbiased like advice or opinion or like whatever, right? Um, but I was really fighting on like going back to therapy, and I was also really fighting on like getting put on meds. But I remember that day, after I went to the doctor. It was also a day that we had the moms group, and I went to moms group. I got there late, but I showed up, and then when I was driving back home, my son fell asleep in the car, and I remember just being in the car, just like crying, right? And I posted on my Instagram stories, all my close friends. Sorry if you guys are not on there. I don't know and everyone who listens, but I posted on my close friends like story. I was like, guess who just went to the doctor and was diagnosed with postpartum anxiety and is gonna get referred to a psych to be put on meds. And I was like, me. And then on the next slide over, I posted, I said, I'm like, but that's okay. I'm like, I know that the Lord is going to use this one day for my testimony, and I'm going to help so many more people. And I'm like, and it just gives me more content for my podcast, because at that point I was still doing my mothering anxiety podcast. So to me, it was like, all right, cool. If I'm dealing with anxiety, it means that I can keep talking about anxiety, and then it's just going to create for more interesting episodes, right? But I was so set on like, no, like I know that God is going to use this for my testimony. Um, and that it's going to help people. Like I just like I know it. Like I know that he doesn't waste anything. So, I went to the doctor on a Tuesday morning, which was October 24th. This year, on Wednesday, October 23rd, because we had a leap year, right? Um I will be sharing my testimony. So exactly 1 year later, I will be sharing exactly what God was doing and how God was working in my life. When at that point I was diagnosed with postpartum anxiety and needed to be put on meds, until now, where I am now, not on meds. I don't want to say completely anxious free, but just finally seeing the outcome as to why the Lord had to put me through that trial. And like, if anyone out there just didn't believe in God or doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe that God exists, like, how can you tell me that he doesn't exist when literally like on the exact same day, I guess a day after, um I will be sharing exactly what he was doing in my life and something that I couldn't even see a year ago. Like, that to me is like, okay, that is confirmation to me that the Lord was working through all of this for his good, right? And it's not even it's yeah, it's my testimony and it's what's happened in my life, but really what I'm sharing is the love that God has for me. And I'm sharing the mercy that he's had for me, and I'm just sharing his goodness. I'm sharing how he can literally turn anything into good. And that makes me extremely excited cuz I'm like, "Oof, okay," right? I'm also still extremely anxious. I'm afraid that I'm going to pass out or throw up or like poop my pants while I'm on there. But I know that I am meant to speak on this, and I know that I am meant to speak on this on that day, right? So um I might need a few extra wipes or something when I am done, but I know that the Lord will be with me. And he will give me the strength to go up there and to be able to speak. But also another little like side note, side tidbit. Um on the day that I will be speaking, it is I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I guess I'm not mentioning names or anything. But it is the birthday of my my past relationship that I was in um prior to meeting my husband, my abusive relationship. And it's just it's sort of like a closure in a sense, not a closure about the relationship, but this relationship really brought me down and completely made me lose myself. And as if like I didn't already deal with intense social anxiety, being in this relationship and just the emotional and verbal abuse that I went through made my social anxiety even worse. And very slowly, I have been working on stepping out of that and realizing that the words that this person said shouldn't define who I am um, or who I am meant to be. One of the most critical things that this person would say would always be about the way that I would dress. Would always comment on why am I wearing that or what's with those shoes, and just would make fun of me and would mock me. um and I lost, like, I had always prior to that just been so confident and like, all right, I'm gonna wear this and I'm gonna rock this, right? And I know that like that sounds vain, but the just the abuse that I went through, I lost my sense of style, I guess. And kind of like what made me me. And yeah, I think I talked about this in like another episode, right? Where like I would cry trying to get ready, and my husband would just be like, what is wrong with you? Because I would cry because I wouldn't know what to wear because I would just overthinking and just like remember all the things that were said to me before. And I feel that like very slowly I had been coming out of that. um and I'm starting to feel like better in my own skin, I guess you can say, more confident in who I am. And I know that that is through God, right? Like, because the only person that I should be thinking about that that loves me and cares for me is God, and not like the opinions of other people, right? Um and I have the best hype women on my side right now because Yeah, I just, you know, getting complimented always feels good, right? Like, oh, this looks cute. Oh, you look good. Oh, this and stuff, right? And as someone like me who's just kind of struggled a lot with just like body image issues and body dysmorphia and you know, a lack of self-esteem, lack of self-worth, like it it's very encouraging. So just the fact that I will be doing that, talking about you know, talking about social anxiety really in my testimony and what that has made me deal with all of my life. It's just like like a confirmation that like even God used that relationship for my good, right? Because I needed to lose myself in order to find myself in Christ. And you know, God is just, he's just so good. He is just amazing, and I can't wait to share what he's done in my life. And I pray um, that the right ears listen to it, that the right people be there, because I know that sometimes people miss, and you know, because of scheduling or sickness or like whatever. Um, but I just pray that the Lord can bring the right people that need to hear what He has done in my life and how He's transformed my social anxiety to do something for Him, right? Like me dealing with social anxiety, I'm going to be up on the pulpit, not preaching, but you know, sharing my testimony about having social anxiety. Um, and there's no way, absolutely no way that I could do that without His strength and without Him on my side. So I just pray that you know, the right people are there. And if anyone listening to this, if you know someone who's dealing with social anxiety, or just anxiety in general, like invite them to the women's group in October 23rd. Within God's, you know, God willing, I will be sharing my testimony that day. And I just pray that the right ears hear it. Um, because I know that God wastes nothing, and that everything bad He turns into good. So today I am learning to let go of my self-doubt. I am learning to not listen to that sneaky snake that is telling me that I am still alone, that I am still worthless. I am learning to find my identity in Christ, and learning to let go of the opinions of others that others have of me, and the judgments that others have put on me, or perceived judgments, you know. Um, I'm learning to just accept that I am loved by Christ, and that is all that matters, because I am a new creation.